going down. It's going down, 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 down. It's going down, down, it's going down, 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 down. It's going down, 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 down. It's going down, down. It's going.
you have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never gonna learn to grow.
Or whatever you could throw at me, like, you're not gonna take me away from what I wanna do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
to the 2023 National Team Trials presented by YETI. We are in Austin, Texas, where the best climbers in the country have gathered to compete for a spot on the Boulder and Lead national team. USA Climbing is excited to be at the beautiful, brand new Mesa Rim Climbing Center in Austin, Texas. If you're in the area, y'all should come check it out. I'm Megan Martin here with three-time Canadian national champion, Allison Bess. Allison, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here once again to kick off the second half of this semifinal.
Yeah, it's basically halftime. We had the men go through the boulder round earlier, and now they're getting ready for the semifinal lead round. And it was an intense first round, and so much is at stake here, and that's really the main point we're trying to drive home here today, because the men are trying to get on the national team. So it's a combined scoring format. Boulder and lead disciplines, they'll get their score from Boulder. It's going to be added to their lead score. The top 5 men and the top 5 women yesterday will make the national team. The women are already decided. We're waiting to decide the men today. 3 climbers that have been pre-selected: Natalia Grossman, Brooke Rabbitoot, and Colin Duffy. That's why they're not here. They're already on the team. The other 5 join them. And why do you want to be on the team? Because you want to be able to compete at the World Cup events this year in hopes to possibly qualify for Paris 2024.
And in anticipation of the next Olympic cycle, it is a little bit of a different format. Still the top 20 men from the qualifying round. They will have one attempt on one single route with a 6-minute clock. There is, however, a new scoring format for this combined event. The top is worth 100 points, and that is scaled down towards the bottom. As the climbers go higher and higher up the route, they will be awarded more for their efforts.
Exactly. So a really cool scoring system. It's all about cumulative points. So we've been paying attention to that a lot. And these are the results after the boulder round. You see Adam Shahar up there in first with that 78.7. So he had a total of 100 points to get in the boulder, and that's what he ended up with. Simon Hibbler right behind him, and Hugo Hoyer after that. If you look towards the middle, Ben Hanna, Ellis Ernsberger, Bob Dylan Countryman, they have very, very close scores. So watch them in this round, because the lead is going to be so important. And we're ending that top 8 right now with Nathaniel Coleman. And here's a little highlight of Adam Shahar, who absolutely crushed in this round.
Yeah, Adam really impressed everybody. I think he came out a little bit earlier in the round, having qualified slightly lower in the qualification event, but he really took advantage of that lower pressure situation. You can see just a last-minute clutch on that slab there, followed by a top on this 4th boulder, really putting himself solidly on the top of the leaderboard, and he sat there pretty for the rest of the round.
Yeah, I'm sure he was so pleased with that. I mean, oftentimes when you come out a little earlier, you're not really sure. So as he watched man after man not match his score, it was probably so exciting for him to have that run in the bouldering round. So Simon Hibbler was another standout, one that we've seen in competitions, but usually in the semis, hasn't really been in the finals as much, so he's psyched to walk away from the bouldering round today in a really good position, topping many boulders, fighting so hard. You see here on this boulder, I mean, there was a boulder earlier that I'm pretty sure he wasn't breathing on for a moment. He put out so much fight, and going into lead, it sets him up really nicely to possibly make it into the final tonight, which would be huge for him.
Here we have, go for it, Megan. Here we have our first look at the lead route. As I said, the top hold is worth 100 points. Scaled it down from there. So holds 1 to 10 are worth 1 point each. 11 to 30 are worth 2 points each. 31 to 60 worth 3, and 61 to the top worth 4 points each. Every athlete gets a 0.1 for an advancement towards the next hold. So that used to be called a plus, and now it is going to be signified with that decimal place.
And if you ever want to look at a better breakdown of everything, you can go to the USA Climbing website and check out the app to find that scoring system, and it breaks down the boulders and the lead route a bit better in terms of those actual breakdowns. But here we're getting started with Quinn O'Francia. He was out first in the boulder round, so the running order stays the same from discipline to discipline. And, you know, Quinn was another athlete that he came out early, and he honestly climbed very well, got very close on a few boulders, topped some boulders, so he kind of set the tone for the round. And the boulder that he did really well on, that he kind of fell off of the top of, didn't get topped until the very last competitor, Sean Bailey. So he's coming into this round with a score of 52.8 and looking to improve upon that score.
Yeah, similarly to Adam, he did have a really great round and was our first athlete out, as he is our first athlete out on the lead route as well. Climbed really well, had some really heartbreaking finishing moments that would have made his score a little bit higher up towards where we see Adam at the top of our leaderboard. So he does have his work cut out for him on this lead route, but he is an incredibly talented lead climber. He's definitely very capable of pushing himself up into that top 8 position to make the final. As you can see on the bottom left corner of your screen, he is currently in the section where every move he makes is worth 1 point, easing towards that 10-point zone. As you can see on the right, once he does get control of that 10-point zone, every move he makes will now be worth 2 points.
Yeah, so important here once you get into those zones where the points are worth more. It's really important to fight for every move that you can because it's kind of right there within your grasp. And if you're not going to get to the top, having that chance to really improve upon that overall score is so important.
Yeah, and if anybody's curious about the reason for the scaling of the route in this way, one of the reasons is that not all lead routes are created with an equal amount of holds. So in an ideal world, maybe we would have a lead route that had exactly 100 points in terms of hold number, but that is not the way it works. That would be a little bit restrictive for a route setter. So there is a varying amount of holds on every lead route, so it has to be scaled down this way. In addition, because it is one single route, most of the athletes get up towards that 10-point area. So every move is worth more towards the top because it is going to reward our athletes even more for getting extra high.
Exactly, and you see now he's moved into that zone where every hold is worth 3 points, that 30 placard indicating that after that hold, every move you make on a scored hold, you will get 3 points for it. So their scores are drastically improving with every hold that they grab, and Quinn's doing a really good job, definitely fighting, and he is an athlete who is also going to be in the speed final later. So we've talked about how this day is really long, and for Quinn it might be one of the longest days. Really good effort there. Looks like a pretty difficult climb. I know that the route setters have been trying to really test the athletes with these routes today, and we saw a lot of technical movements and a lot of diversity in movement yesterday with the women, and this angle is very steep, so you know there's a lot of power involved, so you kind of have to have everything to get high on these routes. So we'll have to see how that ends up for Quinn in the long run, but a score of 103.8, so we just have to see what everyone else does. Pretty good score though to start.
I think different from the women's round yesterday, I think we will see less of our athletes hanging on in that top 8 without climbing the lead route. Yesterday we had Annie Sanders and Kyra Condi both having an amazing bouldering round, and so they ended up on the top of the leaderboard without even having stepped onto the lead. And I don't think we're going to see that here today for the men. Everybody's so close in point ranking, and it was a relatively middle-of-the-road scoring boulder round. So I think these men are going to have to put up a really good score on this lead route in order to push into that final round and get their chance to qualify for the national team later on tonight.
Totally. And up next we have Palmer Larson getting ready for his attempt on the men's semifinal route. Definitely would have wanted to move into this round with a few more points from the boulder round. He definitely tried really hard but wasn't quite able to figure everything out that he wanted to, so he might need to climb the climb of his life here in order to get into the final. He is a good lead climber, but this men's field is just so stacked, so you really have to go for it.
You can see his boulder score there of 9.3, one of the lower scores from the boulder round, as Megan just said. And for the athletes that have a low score like that, the key is really going to be their mentality coming into this lead climb. It's going to be really important for them to let go of the boulder round a little bit, clear their head, treat this lead climb as a whole new opportunity to earn points. And if you come into a lead route like this with a negative mentality, it's going to be a lot harder to push through some of these harder moves and climb really well. And Palmer is one of those athletes that does the best when he's climbing efficiently and climbing well. And so it's going to be really important for him in particular to be in that positive mental space and to have let go of probably quite disappointing bouldering round for him this morning.
Exactly, very well said. And he's already quickly into that 10. So now every scored hold from here on out until the 30 is worth 2 points. Now, yesterday for the women's route, we noticed a lot of precarious movements at the beginning of the route. I feel like this one is a little more straightforward.
Yeah, we noticed Quinn O'Francy had got up pretty high on this route relatively quickly. He still had 4 minutes out of his 6-minute total left when he fell. So I think this route in particular climbs quite quickly. See Palmer has only spent a minute of his time, and he's already up above that 10 zone, about to get into this steeper section. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think the women sometimes tend to climb a little slower, but I think the way that their route was set yesterday, they spent a lot more time at the bottom before they even got into the steeper section.
Exactly. Got a little hung up there, a little indecisive, but it looks like he's back on track with his decision making, and hopefully he can find a nice flow from here on out. Getting into a pretty steep section of the wall.
Really good body tension from Palmer Larson. We'll see if he can get out of this toe hook.
That was spicy. Oh, I spoke too soon. That toe hook, really nice to hold him into the wall, but the release on that angle puts a lot of pressure on his hands, and honestly, good chance that his skin was kind of sweating. We are in a very humid climate, and grabbing those little screw-ons at that angle, it happens pretty quickly. So a little bit of a slip there, a little miscalculation with maybe the sequence for Palmer there, but
I believe that section where he fell was supposed to be a jump, a little bit more dynamic. One of the lead route setters was telling me earlier that he thought it was possible for sure to do it in a more static way with that heel hook and hold the tension like Palmer Larson was attempting to do there, but I think that is the more difficult way to do that section, and definitely was not the easiest way that the route setters had intended athletes to get through that part of the route.
And it's so interesting because sometimes, especially on steeper angles, sometimes holding tension ends up making you use so much more energy than being more dynamic would. So even when you're doing a movement where maybe your one foot could cut, that foot cut, rather than holding the tension with the foot to the hold, can actually make you more taxed. So it's kind of hard to figure out sometimes, and especially depending on your own style of climbing, you might trend towards one way rather than the other way. Adam Shahar, the man we've been talking about already in this round, because he is at the top of the leaderboard from bouldering. Obviously that's changed a little because Quino Francia has already climbed, so that's why he's highlighted there. He has been on the boulder and on the lead, so he has a total score, whereas Adam is right behind him with just the boulder score.
So we see Adam pulling onto the wall now, getting really set up for this intro section, which, as we've said before, is a little bit precarious, but not so much as the women's round yesterday. People are sort of motoring through this section. I think, maybe contrary to some of his fellow competitors, I think Adam has a little bit less pressure in some ways on this route because he does have such a high score from the bouldering round, but at the same time, when you're going into a competition like this with no expectations and you do have a really good performance, you do sort of have this little moment of like a door opens and you all of a sudden have this opportunity that you maybe weren't expecting to have. And so I think he probably has quite a bit of nerves, quite a few butterflies, anticipating that he could really have an opportunity here to make a statement for himself and make it into those top 8 and finally into the final round.
And for Adam, at team trials last year, he missed the lead semifinal by 1 spot, and then at nationals this past year, he was in 57th going into semis, so he didn't come close to making it. So it really is that open door moment here where he's having his climbing been articulated in the bouldering round as well as he wanted it to, and having that shot coming in here to possibly put himself in a place where he could make the final. So yes, like you were saying, those expectations having maybe not been as high earlier on, now that door is open and he's looking like in a good flow right now, so there's a possibility that he could really set the bar here.
Yeah, and you can see him doing a really good job of, he did a little bit of a hybrid method maybe between a jump and just a foot cut there.
Yep.
He had kept his foot on to get to that hold, but then was able to use a little bit of momentum to pop out of it. Now making his way onto that 30 zone hold section. He's about to push into the area, onto the head wall where we lost Quino Francia a little bit earlier in the round. Doing a really good job of staying composed. Every move he makes, he's moving farther and farther towards the holds that are worth more on this lead route. Fighting a little bit now as he moves into these crimps, balancy edge sections. Looks like he was maybe gonna try to make that clip a little bit early there. That is the clip that we saw Quino Francia try to make and then change his mind.
Looking pretty casual here, like he has a lot left in the tank, which is a good spot for Adam to be in. Now, Nationals was in November, so that was a while ago. So that was a lot of time to maybe reassess what he needed to do to be really prepared for this competition, because he's really coming out looking great. A little bobble there, possibly getting a little bit fatigued at that moment, but great climbing from Adam Shahar and setting up a new high point for the round.
And if you look at that foot that he put his left foot on there and was going to match it, it's a little bit of a nasty trick for that pink foothold from the route setters. They put it right under the angle change where there's a little strip of metal over top of it. So I think it actually is slightly blocked, and if you miscalculate it just a small amount, you'll end up standing on the slippery metal instead of the hold. And he did a really good job of being precise with that foot switch, but I think was just a little bit too fatigued and pumped to make it through.
So that is his combined score, 132.7. It could get him a high enough score for the top 8. There's a good chance. That's a pretty high score so far. He, again, coming from that boulder round with a score at least 10 points higher than anybody else's, I believe, puts him in a really good spot. And he didn't have any disaster happen in lead, so he's in a great place to possibly stay at the top of the leaderboard. It's a little swapped right now on our graphic, but you can see the 132.7. That is the highest score so far, with so many of the other athletes not even getting into the 70s. I guess he was just about 10 points above everybody else, so we'll have to see how that works. I will say with that high point, he did just get a couple more points than Quinn, because he was just a controlled hold ahead of him. So maybe would have liked to space that out a bit better, but really great climbing from Adam Shahar.
If I had to predict, Megan, I would assume that will put Adam Shahar pretty close to the bubble of making finals. Yes. I think maybe just in or just out, but sometimes we end up with lead routes that are harder than the route setters expect, and maybe the athletes are a little bit more tired. So it has happened before where even the more lead specialized athletes don't get very high on the route, and if that is the circumstance, then and that high point that Adam Shahar just set holds at least for a little while, he might be well into finals. It's sort of impossible to tell until we see our heavy hitting lead climbers come out and test themselves on this difficult route.
So true, but I do feel like this route is a little more straightforward than some of the other ones we've seen, which would make me think that around where Adam did fall is likely where a lot of people are going to get, if not a bit further. So, like you said, we're going to have to wait and see. We have Ben Hanna on the wall right now. Good at lead, but I wouldn't say one of our lead specialists. Kind of boulder and lead. Higher, I would say he's higher weighted on the boulder side a bit.
I do think a route that is straightforward like this really suits Ben Hanna. He's definitely a powerful climber. He definitely likes moves like the one that's coming up a little bit now, where you have to cut loose and maintain the tension. See him lining up for this jump, doing a really nice job of holding that swing. Let's see if he can get his feet back onto the wall to recover a little bit better. Hampa smashing.
Clearly has a lot left in the tank still. He is wearing a shirt that says Slovenia, but don't worry, he is an American. He is trying to get on the U.S. team. Oftentimes at these international competitions, especially on the youth side, athletes trade jerseys. It's kind of a fun thing that the athletes do. So he's choosing to wear that shirt today, hopefully channeling some Slovenian power to get through the lead route.
That was a really good shot of, you could see how hard his leg was straining to keep his foot on that hold. One thing that lead climbers do really well is use all four limbs of their body really, really well and really efficiently to alternate in taking the pressure off one arm or another. If you've just done a really hard jump move like Ben Hanna did, you could really see him using his legs to relieve some of the fatigue from his arms as he works up into this head wall section, which has tired and gassed people really quickly, it seems.
Yeah, the angle is still pretty kicked back. You can see it there. And then the holds get really small. You go from climbing on a lot of nice, big, open hand holds to then all of a sudden these nasty little crimps. And that one specifically is blocked. Good effort from Ben Hanna. Probably would have liked to get a little bit higher there, but we'll have to see how his score is reflected after adding in that boulder score. All the men kind of falling within, you know, a few holds of each other. But again, once you get into those areas where the scored holds are worth more points, that's where the big difference can happen in terms of their overall score. So Ben Hanna's going to walk away with a score of 103.7. 103.7, so bringing him just below Quino Francia. Not sure if that will be enough, but we'll have to, again, wait and see. Remember, we're taking the top 8 from the boulder round and the lead round combined into the final tonight.
And I have been told from the route setters about this route that once you get through that jump section where we saw Ben Hanna cut feet, it is just resistance to the top, so you will see our lead athletes really liking that a lot. Quick look at our combined standings. Adam Shahar back at the top of the leaderboard with 132.7, and Ben Hanna sliding into that third place spot with 103.7.
Gavin Albright stepping out for his attempt at the lead route. Climbed quite well in the qualification round on the lead route, falling in the middle of the pack of 20, around 10th place from qualification on the lead side, so could definitely do something here. He is on the younger side, and he has been in semis in lead before for nationals last year, 2022, and also at team trials the year before. He ended up 12th. So lead is definitely more of his discipline. So I'm sure he's psyched to get a chance at this semifinal here.
Yeah, he definitely had a lower scoring bouldering round compared to the other athletes competing here today. So I think he's looking for his opportunity to shine on this lead route, and hopefully he can easily get through this jump section and show off all of his resistance training towards the top, and maybe we can see a new high point.
It is interesting when you have a route like this where it's kind of split up like that, that jump part. Some of the lead specialists might not be as psyched about the possibility of having to jump, but then looking forward to the resistance part of the route where some of the boulder specialist athletes might be dreading that part.
Absolutely, and this jump in this route is fairly low down, so I think people will enjoy that as well, to be able to get to that section and get that move over with while they're still fresh and still feeling pretty good. So as you can see, Gavin has almost got to the jump already within the first minute of his climb time. Just making sure to get his heels set up right as he moves into that left hand hold. That hand is pretty bad, but since he's moving up sort of in a ret right now, he does have good opposition between either a hand and a foot. You can see him setting that heel hook, making that clip really nicely. When setters put flat holds and volumes on the sides of corners like that, it's always really interesting to see how the body positioning demands change, and you can really make those holds feel good by leaning the other direction and moving back and forth on either side of that arret.
Exactly, and right now in that toe hook position, really making sure he stays on the friction part of that hold, because the outside of where his foot is all slippery texture. You can notice that he does have some fingers taped, I think, on his left hand, so he's going to be needing to be very intentional with all the hand placements, having that extra layer of tape as he goes through that jump with really no problem there, quite easily through it. Looking to get into this next section where the points change again after that 30 placard. Straining a little bit here.
His elbow's coming up a bit there for sure. Yeah, Ben Hanna was able to rest in that section. Gavin was looking a little bit more tired than Ben was, but something that's interesting about athletes that have more power than endurance, Ben Hanna maybe being an example of that. Gavin, likely, since lead is his discipline, does a good job of being able to get some of the power back when he's feeling fatigued. But he really is powering through this section. He's not taking moments to rest, and we are ending up losing him at the same spot where we lost Ben Hanna.
Still great climbing through that route. Again, those crimps, though, maybe as more of a lead specialist, he might normally like them. With all the layers of tape on those fingers, his index and middle finger on both hands, might be hard to hold. Held this jump really well, but started to strain here a little bit, able to clip and then keep moving as quickly as possible with no fumbles there, which is really good for him to be able to keep moving. He's going to have a combined score of 57.8. Likely we will not see him in the final. That doesn't seem like it would be high enough to make it there, but great climbing from Gavin Albright, still very young, 18 years old, so many years ahead of him, only been in the elite series or even eligible for a few years. So here's a quick look at our standings. Adam Shahar still holding on to the top, followed by Quino Francia and Ben Hanna. All three of them have climbed on the lead route. Now the rest of the men in that top 8 right now have only done the boulder round, so they still have a chance to improve upon those scores.
Megan, Charlie Barron walking out now, looking really psyched, smiling, sort of interacting with the crowd. That's really great to see from him. I don't think he had the bouldering round he was looking for this morning either. Bouldering is his preferred discipline, but it's really cool that he's able to have the positive mindset that he does now. I don't know if it's because he has low expectations now because the bouldering didn't go as well as he thought, and he's just going to try his best in the lead route, and sometimes that's a little bit liberating, but Charlie does a good job of being level-headed and taking things as they come, and so it's cool to see him walking out of isolation with a smile on his face.
Totally. I mean, not having that boulder round that he wanted puts him in a place where he really doesn't have anything to lose. He can just try his hardest and see what happens. So, like you said, it is kind of freeing, whereas sometimes when you're in a different situation, like having a great boulder round and knowing that you still need a great lead round, that can add a lot of pressure, and it's hard to not let that take over and make you so tense, especially in this format. You know, most of these athletes, this is their first time in this format, so it's a lot to deal with emotionally and physically.
Yeah, and training for lead and trying to perform well in the lead discipline is something that's relatively new for Charlie Barron, and I think he was a little bit disappointed in qualifiers. He didn't feel like he was able to show off all the hard work he's been putting in. And similarly to Kate Hardy yesterday, he just hasn't done that many lead routes. And so that also is sort of a liberating feeling to just be focused on learning and focused on improving and trying to show off all the training you've been doing.
Totally. And I feel like something interesting about that is, you know, putting in all that training is the first step, right? And something that's necessary, but having your training align with how you perform in a discipline sometimes takes a little longer than you might like it to take. Sometimes it happens immediately. It's just, you never know. So you have to put in the work and you hope that everything aligns. Oh, just struggling a little bit with that foot cut and not really having enough gas in the tank to finish out that move, but really, I mean, good climbing from Charlie. It did look like he had a lot of fun, and he was able to try really hard.
Good effort for him, though, too. Doing that foot cut and then committing to moving towards that next hold, I think they will give him that plus. And if that jump proves to be difficult, which it might because he's the second person we've lost in that section, I think getting that plus off the top hold is actually a really good effort from him.
Yeah, any extra points that you can get are so helpful, and they definitely did give him the plus. So he's in a good position. When you're falling in lead, you always want to make sure you're falling doing an extra move, because then at least you're going to get that extra .1 at the end of the day, which, like we've been talking about, everything's accumulated, added together. So we need to, or these athletes need to get as many points as they can in order to have a shot at making it into the top 8.
It is interesting, Megan, with this new combined scoring, the pluses seem to matter less, actually, because it's not ranking. So if you have two athletes in a bottleneck position, they actually are just all trying to get points, and that's sort of full stop.
Yeah, so true. Another look at the standings. The highlighted athletes, Adam, Quinn, Ben, and Charlie, all having competed in boulder and lead. Those middle athletes, Simon, Hugo, Ellis, and Bob, have only competed in boulder, and they're still in that top 8. Right below the top 8, we have Xander and Nathaniel rounding out that top 10. So he's in a good spot right now. He has yet to get on the lead route. So the fact that we can still see him in the top 10 just based off of his boulder score is looking pretty good for Nathaniel.
Yeah, and like we talked about before, those scores, I guess those rankings from the bouldering don't matter as much as the overall amount of points that they get between boulder and lead. And because there is such narrow margins between all those scores, I don't think any fans of any of those athletes in the top few should be too panicked yet. There's a lot to play for, and because there was so many similar results in the bouldering round, this lead route is really going to matter, and I think we're going to see those results switch around quite a bit.
Totally, and someone who could switch those results around right now is Nathan Sato. In the lead qualification round, he was tied in the 4th place position with a score of 72 points with Ellis Ernsberger, so definitely an athlete who could get pretty high on this route, and coming into this part of the competition with not a super high boulder score, so he could flip things around a bit if he has a good attempt on this semifinal route.
Yeah, and I think he's a little bit newer to the open circuit.
He's young. He's 16 years old, I believe. So early into his elite career.
And for people like me who haven't really seen him climb and compete that much, it was really exciting and a little bit out of nowhere to watch him in the qualifying round come out pretty low down in the ranking, close to the end, having not had the best bouldering round, and then absolutely blow people's minds by almost getting up to the high point on the lead route. A little bit of a slip from him. Good job recovering on that one.
Yeah, really good save. And it's important to note this gym is incredible. So Mesa Rim, Austin, it's brand new. I believe their grand opening is on March 7th. So we are in the gym having this competition before it has even had their grand opening. And it's one of the biggest gyms I've ever been in. These walls are insanely tall, amazing angles. The bouldering area is epic. It's super open, lots of angle choices. And it's really cool to see this brand new gym here in Austin and the chance that we have to have this competition here. It's pretty awesome. So all you locals out there, make sure you check out Mesa Rim Austin.
Yeah, it is pretty exciting to be here before the gym is even open. It is great in a lot of ways, and I think the only downside is this blood issue that we were having with all the holds being new, all the walls being new. Nathan Sato just resting on one arm where some of his fellow competitors fell earlier, really showing off his resistance, honestly.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot of resistance, and you're totally right. The blood was kind of a huge thing yesterday with the women. It does seem like the men are not having the issue as much, but we'll have to wait and see because, you know, they do still have a whole nother round to go through tonight, so we'll have to see who ends up in the top 8 and if those people have fresher skin or not. Going to take a second to rest here. Definitely showing signs of the fact that he is a lead specialist, choosing a good resting point and looking pretty comfortable there. A lot of boulder specialists, if they were to rest there, they might not look as comfortable. And I've always felt that if you're not able to get that endurance back, it's honestly just better to keep moving. If you know you can recover and it's going to give you more gas in the tank, then it makes sense to just kind of chill. But not everybody can do that. So Nathan trying to get back into the sequence on this route. Yeah. Kind of struggling a little bit there out of the rest.
And gas in the tank is really going to be an important theme at this event. Obviously, we had the women's event go. I think a bit of a surprising fall from Nathan. Would have expected him to get a little bit higher on the route. I think that was not the show he was looking to put on. Yeah, I think that'll be a little bit disappointing for him. We'll see what that does to his score.
It's visible on his face that that is not what he wanted to happen. It was interesting. He was in a really nice spot with the rest, but then to get out of it, he wasn't really able to, and he never looked comfortable in that heel hook position where he needed to rock up. So, you know, again, so young, just 16 years old, still kind of learning the process of these elite competitions. Obviously, lots of experience on the youth side, but it is a jump from the youth to the elite, and we're just psyched to see that there are so many younger athletes really committing to that jump. That combined score for Nathan Sato, 70.6. Probably not going to be enough tonight, but again, a long career ahead for that one.
And we still have a lot of climbing left, both during this round and later on tonight. As I was just saying, these are massive days that these athletes aren't really used to. This is a new format, a lot more climbing. Quick look at our combined standings with Adam Shahar in the top spot, followed closely by Quinn Francia, Ben Hanna, and Nathan, all who have climbed their lead route. And we actually have Charlie Barron should be the one highlighted there at the bottom, just under that finals line now, also having climbed his lead route. Everybody else yet to come.
Luke Murring walking out. We've seen a lot of the men with the little shoe covers. Smart idea to keep the chalk off your rubber. Sometimes you see people walk out with little towels or whatnot. You definitely want to step onto the route with your shoes as fresh as can be. So we'll see a few different ways to do that. I like the booties though. I feel like that's a great way. Seems even more efficient and easier to keep track of, perhaps.
High fashion, too.
It is high fashion. Don't you think?
But back to the physical demand of these days, I was just talking to Carrie Scott, actually, today, who is fresh off of her finals appearance. She was one of the athletes that had almost every finger taped because she was bleeding so much. And she was saying it's really hard mentally, too. She was one of our older competitors yesterday at 26 years young. But she was saying making a final like that is something that she's always dreamed of. And it's a little bit frustrating to make a final and almost not feel like you can climb your best. And I mean, she even went as far as to say she felt embarrassed that she couldn't hold on to some of the holds yesterday. But I think
no
it's
need
really,
to feel embarrassed, that's for sure.
I mean, don't worry, that's what I told her. But I think it is hard for these athletes to have
is.
such a physical demand and to be, in some instances, living their dream of making a final and feeling so exhausted that they don't necessarily get to fully enjoy it while they're in that moment.
But I will say, oftentimes, if you haven't made a final yet and you do make one, that confidence boost of knowing you can makes it possible to make them again. So I'm sure Carrie Scott, that won't be the last final we see her in the future. So hopefully she's able to have a different scenario next time in terms of how her skin holds up and how tired she is. Luke Muring moving pretty quickly through this section. You know, he's another one of the athletes who's pretty equally matched in terms of the boulder discipline and the lead discipline. I feel like he's quite good at both of them. And just referencing his results from Bouldering Nationals, I always still do that because for the longest time we used to just have
they were separate.
It was lead in sport, sport and speed and Bouldering Nationals. So, but 2022 Nationals, 3rd in bouldering and 4th in the lead. So this format, the combined, it's kind of perfect for an athlete like Luke.
Yeah, and I think the factor that will come into play here is honestly that fatigue that I was talking about with Carrie. A lot of these athletes aren't used to doing both disciplines in a single day. It's going to be a different kind of training for these athletes. It's going to be building up that honestly day endurance to be able to do all of these rounds over and over again in one day. This discipline in particular is really physically demanding, having both lead and boulder, and this is just the first event of its kind in the U.S., and I think these athletes are going to learn from doing more training and more practice on this style of competition.
Totally, and Luke looking really good here, like he has a lot in the tank, still just kind of maneuvering around that rope to set the heel. Kind of an awkward position, but up into that crimp nicely. Now the next one is blocked, so he has to make sure he goes to it very accurately, which he is able to do.
Looking pretty composed with
the
that.
way in which she moved just confirms that he has so much more to give. Very precise with that foot placement, where we've seen some of the men have issues.
Making this clip really nicely. We saw Quinn Francia try to clip from that position and second guess himself and go back and just go for one more move. So he's looking really composed here, looking like he's going to be pushing for a couple more moves, inching his way towards...
Oh, a little slip still. Even though he was so precise, he still wasn't able to avoid that slip there. But great climbing from Luke Muring. Should give him a pretty good overall score. He's tied in terms of how far he got on this route with Adam Shahar. So interestingly enough, Adam Shahar still, or not tied, sorry, he gets that extra 0.1. So just that movement ahead of him. But Adam Shahar still high up in the standings in terms of the lead and the overall results. So really coming out with a bang. That'll give Luke the score of 98.9. We'll have to wait and see if that's going to be good enough. I think still a pretty good spot. We just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and Megan, something that is a new challenge for our route setters in these type of events is trying to make it so that the difficulty of the boulder round is similar to the difficulty of the lead round. And so far, that is proving to be quite accurate right now for our men's round. These men are getting sort of up into that middle section of the lead route, proving to be quite difficult.
Yeah, it's definitely proved to be quite difficult. It's funny because though the first half is pretty straightforward, this second half and really just that part we're seeing a lot of the men in, it's actually very precarious and you can slip easily. Another look at our current standings, Adam Shahar on top with the score of 132.7. That is the score to beat. Quinn Francia behind him and Ben Hanna after that, but there's a huge 30-point difference between those the two of them and Adam. Hugo Hoyer up for his attempt. His first season on the elite circuit, already been in finals in lead and in the boulder at nationals this past year. Looking to get into the final here tonight and work his way into that top 8.
And he is one of the athletes that did do fairly well this morning in the bouldering round. So he's just going to be looking to build upon that. He is currently sitting in 7th in the combined ranking. So at least at the moment, he already is in a spot to make that final. So this lead route for him will just be pushing that score up as far as possible as more of the athletes come out after him and build their scores as well.
Exactly. Hugo trying to be as intentional as possible at the beginning of this route. As Allison said earlier, the points are scored from the top down, starting with 100 at the top, so some of the opening moves are not worth any points, but on this route actually most of the holds are scored. It's just really the left-hand start that has no points, so the men are in kind of a nice position here, knowing that they aren't going to make a lot of moves and not gain any points.
Hugo's doing a good job of moving up into this jump section. He's testing it out a little bit, trying to figure out what he's going to do to get to this next hold. The hold his right hand is on right now is not very good. He's really using that toe hook below him. But then when he gets up to that hold that he's moved to now with his left hand, that one is pretty in-cut. There's a little screw on top of the scoopy part of that hold. And he did a really nice job of getting through that section. We've seen a couple of the men struggle to get their feet up, struggle to get back into the flow of this route, and he did that section really well.
Yeah, he really did. Honestly, even though Hugo's so young, only being 15, he does have so much experience on the youth side, not just nationally, but also internationally. He was first in Boulder at Youth World Championships this past season and 6th in lead. So another athlete where this combined format is really set up nicely for in terms of his ability in both of the disciplines, and he's showing that here on the lead route.
You can see now where his feet just were. He has entered that 31 to 60 zone, so every move he does will be worth an extra 3 points. It's really important for these athletes to stay composed in this section, just knowing that every ounce of energy they can give will impact their score greatly. Just falling a little bit short of that bump move in that really tough section where we've lost a lot of athletes.
Yeah, we definitely have, but really great showing from Hugo Hoyer. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more of the men's semifinal after.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me, it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never gonna learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not gonna take me away from what I wanna do. You can't stop me.
Welcome back to the men's semifinal lead portion of this competition at the USA Climbing 2023 National Team Trials. Dylan Bob Countryman up on men's semifinal route. Definitely capable of getting points here. He is in an interesting spot. He, coming out of the Boulder round, has a score that's very similar to some other athletes, so making some separation here by doing well on this route would really put him in a good spot to possibly make it into the final.
And he really came into this season with so much ambition and so much drive, and really that was put to the test and successful at Nationals this year with him winning the bouldering event, and I think he's hoping to carry that momentum forward into this event as well.
Yeah, and Bob's story is a little interesting in the sense that he did get to compete in the season the previous year, and team trials last year and that nationals in 2021 as well did not really go as planned for him. His breakout season was really this past year with nationals and with that momentum coming into here, so he didn't really have that breakout first year that he wanted, so he really had a lot to fight for at nationals, and it was so cool to see it kind of work out for him.
Yeah, and it seems like he's one of those athletes that drive and that determination and perhaps that disappointment in his bouldering ground will actually fuel him to get even higher up this lead route.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And while we're here, we have a guest in the booth. Excited to welcome Kyra Condi, who, if you tuned in during the women's round, did amazing and ended up second place and is on the national team. Kyra, welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
We're really happy for you to be here. What do you think about this route so far?
Yeah, I think it looks like it's really powerful and a little bit risky through that section. It looks like it tires people out really quickly. There's a lot of crucial foot moves, it seems like. You need to put weight through the feet a lot. And then this section here just looks so crimpy and a little bit low percentage, and you have feet that you really need to put a lot of weight through, and kind of similar to the lower section.
Exactly, and with that, Bob, getting into a high point section here for the men, honestly working through those precarious foot moves really nicely, and he is one of the athletes who needs to get some points here in order to separate himself from some of the other athletes who could also do well on this route. So every point really important, and now he is in that zone where he's getting 4 points per every scored hold.
He's doing a really good job of getting those little micro shakes in between moves. None of these positions are really all that restful. He's got his foot on the dual texture, part of that volume.
Hard to get out of a move like that.
Yeah, this wall also it's what we call sneaky steep, I feel like. So everything is a little bit better up there than you think it is. So from the ground, you look at those holds and you're like, oh my gosh, these are really bad. But once you're actually up there, some of them feel better than you expect, which is nice because it's not quite as steep as it looks.
That is always a nice surprise, not a surprise you always get in a round. So if you can have a surprise like that, that's great. So that combined score for Bob will be 140.5 with that movement. That's going to be adjusted here in the standings. So that's putting him at the top. So that's exactly what he wanted to do, is come out and have a climb like that. Obviously, the goal is always to get 100 points and top the route, but you can see he is definitely pleased with his climbing there, and he should be, because I think he is now in a place where he has a good shot of getting into the next round. So getting some congratulations from some other parents around the gym. You know, a lot of these parents, they've known all these athletes since they were just in the D and C category in youth, so it's almost like everyone's family here.
I always get a hug from Kyra's mom after I'm done competing.
I think everyone gets a hug from Kathy
your mom,
after they're done
Kathy
competing.
is a great hugger. So you see Bob Countryman up with a score of 140.5 at the top of the leaderboard as Brian Squire gets ready to get on his attempt in the semifinal route.
Yeah, just a great example, too, of how you never know what's going to happen in the results. That's something I kept telling myself while I was competing. Well, even if I didn't have the bouldering round that I wanted, I knew I could make up for it in lead, which is what makes this format so interesting.
How great does it feel to be able to say, I know I can make up for it in lead nowadays?
Yeah, I feel like the way you train for this event, at least how I was training, was really focusing on getting as best as I could at both disciplines, just because I could have that option of not only relying on bouldering or not only relying on lead.
It really.
I was just gonna say, what's that? You talked a little bit about your mentality on a day like today for these men. It's obviously a super stressful, super high pressure competition, but it's also really physically demanding. So how do you handle being in that environment all day, and what do you do with your small couple hour or couple minute windows between rounds?
Well, at least leading into this event, I was trying to just stay really positive and, you know, focus on that. And so I was watching Ted Lasso, which is a really positive show about, you know, sportsmanship and stuff like that. So that was how I was kind of getting into that zone.
That's really smart, taking inspiration from TV. I mean, I'm a big believer in inspiration from TV. Brian Squire getting into this section where there's that little jump move before getting into that more sustained section of the route. Also moving from really big holds to very small holds pretty quickly.
Brian's really good at using his heels to get through moves like this, so I think we're going to see him do some really good heel hooks. Here's a great one on that crimp. And you can see when he gets a heel, he completely locks in.
Oh, yeah. Very strong calves. Nice catch there. A pretty big swing, but doesn't look phased at all. It's really cool to see the level of fitness that these men have when they get halfway through the route and they're still able to look so controlled with every movement. And it's really exciting as a viewer because there's a chance that they're going to end up getting really high on the route, and that's what we want to see.
Brian Squire is also our 11th athlete out in the running order, so we are over halfway done the lead portion of our men's semifinal event. Brian is always an interesting athlete to watch. I think he's really come into his own in the past few months. He looked really strong in the bouldering round in particular, and I think he has a lot left to give on this lead route.
Yeah, he's been working really hard in Salt Lake. He's one of the athletes who's moved to Salt Lake recently and been utilizing the training center that we have there. And so watching just even how he's improved since moving to Salt Lake has been really impressive.
Good save from him there.
And lead is a discipline he's generally been good at. I mean, he was in finals at team trials last year in lead. So though he's still on the younger side and, you know, coming into his own on this elite circuit, he has already gained quite a bit of experience. Wow, fighting so hard.
Really fighting. You can see how he was kind of struggling, and then as soon as he got that heel on, he just completely locked in.
And I think as soon as the athletes get good purchase on their right hand on that blocked hold, they're essentially just standing on that 30 level volume. And so while it's still obviously very physically demanding, they sort of get a little bit of relief as soon as they are able to come back around that corner.
Yeah, it's like just making that movement to the hold is really the hard part, and then you can kind of relax for a second. Really smart to keep that upward momentum moving. So hopefully he'll be awarded that 0.1 to his score, and we'll have to see if that is going to put him in a spot where he could possibly get into the final tonight.
And there we see him giving a little side hug to one of our belayers, Ty. Everybody loves him. He's at all of the events. And he's really, because he belays so much, he really becomes friends with a lot of these athletes.
He does.
And everybody knows him.
Yeah, I really feel very secure when Ty is belaying me.
You know, it's really cool to see how much the belay team has evolved. I mean, I remember doing comps way back when, and I don't think we ever had like an actual belay team. Now these belayers, they have actual training in this. Ty is the one who's running everything, and we know that when we step out there as athletes, you know you're going to be safe. It's not just someone who volunteered that day to belay. There's actual certification that they're going through, and it's definitely comforting for the athlete.
Yeah, it's really professional. They introduce themselves like, I'm Ty, I'm going to be your belayer today. They check your harness, they check your knot, then they show that their belay system is safe, and then that's like the little process they go through before you go out.
That did not used to happen.
No.
So you just saw a flash of Brian's score, 100.2. That moves him into about 6th place on the leaderboard. So definitely some other things could happen, but, you know, as of now, he's in that top 8, so that's a good place to be. Simon Hibbler taking another look at the men's semifinal route. Remember, they had a preview earlier for 6 minutes. They were able to look at the route and talk about it with each other, but they do have that time to refresh. Here's another look at those standings. Bob Countryman at the top. You see Brian Squire sneaking into 6th at the moment with that 100.2. And now, unlike with the women's competition, everybody that's in the top 8 right now is highlighted because they've done both the boulder and lead rounds.
And Simon Hibbler is going to be an interesting one to watch. He was ranked in 2nd place in the bouldering round, and he is definitely more known for his abilities in bouldering rather than lead, but as we just saw from that scoreboard, he is currently sitting in a place outside of the final round, so he does need to do something on this lead route in order to solidify his spot in this finals.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see him doing well. He puts a lot into climbing and has, you know, moved around the U.S. He's from Iowa, fellow Midwesterner, moved to Colorado and found a lot of success there outside in training. And so I'm really happy to see him doing well. I know how much he puts in. I actually was talking to him on Instagram, and he said that he's exactly where he wants to be right now. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So
that's
cool
awesome
to see that attitude.
And it's cool because, as you mentioned, he's moved around a lot, and climbing has really been the guide in taking him to different places throughout the country. And now he's back in the Midwest in Minneapolis.
Oh, he's in Minneapolis.
Yeah, you were right when we were talking about it the other day. You're like, I think he moved, and I double-checked with him, and he's in Minneapolis now, and he loves it.
That's good. I feel like if you're from the Midwest, you feel very comfortable in the Midwest. And, Minnesota's climbing scene has really been blown up.
just trying to get his feet back on after that jump. Definitely starting to look a little fatigued here, but Simon is a fighter, and he will fight till the very end because you know he wants to be in that final tonight.
Yeah. Whenever anybody jumps to that white hold on that blue hold that you see on the left side there, I think the white hold is not quite where you think it is. So if you're watching it from straight on, people miss it just slightly, and so that jump is a little sketchy.
And he's always so expressive when he's climbing. I think it was really cool to see him in the boulder round go from positions of almost just pure distress, not being sure what to do. When he was trying to press on one of the boulders, he was just going blue in the face, and then as soon as he got into a comfortable position, he just had a giant smile on his face. So you can see him throwing some of those facial expressions out right now, some power screams, really fighting his way through the middle section of this route, coming up on this hard cross to this blocked crimp.
Oh, wow, he's going to match. That actually,
Yeah, you can't see from this side, but there's a thumb catch that's that exact same hold on the other side of the wall there.
not a bad idea, honestly, especially when you're getting tired. Great climbing from Simon Hibbler. We'll have to see how that's reflected in the scoring. Just working to get that knot untied. You see him go and try. We thought he was going to go all the way, but he decided to match there, which I think was a good idea to readjust, but just didn't have enough left in the tank there. But really great improvement. I mean, maybe one of the best times I've seen him on the lead route in competition recently. So that combined score 108.6. So we'll have to see if that holds or not. These low 100s, I'm honestly not sure.
I mean, the margins are just getting smaller and smaller on this lead route. Oh, here we have
to look at last night. Tyra Connie, do you recognize yourself?
I do, actually. I actually watched this morning because I accidentally woke up really early. I think, kind of excited and rewatched the whole finals round because, I wanted to see how everyone did. Having come out last, I didn't get to watch anyone.
I kind of forgot about that, even though that was just last night. But really fun to watch you on this route. You looked so good. Little leg shake there, but still working your way through it.
That's always the worst when that happens. It's so involuntary. You can call it the sewing machine leg or the Elvis leg. I kind of read that section wrong, I realized.
Yeah.
So the left hand was really bad, but since it had the thumb catch, I thought you were supposed to move off of it and not just bump. And so that's why I read that wrong, but oh well.
I always find it interesting when athletes know that they've done enough, so to speak. Could you tell by the crowd, or did you have to get to the ground and turn around and find your coach, or how did you figure it out?
I actually had no idea. I usually try and find my mom in the crowd, and she'll give me a thumbs up if I did well enough. And I was scanning the crowd and couldn't find my parents. They were standing kind of in the back, and so I didn't know actually until I went over to the kiss and cry and hugged Chloe, and she was like, "You did it." And I was like, "Well,
did you cry?" That almost just made me cry just hearing that. Did you cry when she told you that?
No, almost, but
Ross Fulkerson up on the semifinal route. Now, Ross is also in one of those precarious situations. He really needs to put some points on the board here to try to work his way into the top 8. You don't even see him on the board right now because we only have the top 10 right now, and he's actually sitting. Oh no, we don't have the top
9.
We have 9.
Yeah,
he actually did just move up now.
So something Ross is really good at is finding the flow state, and he's actually researched it a lot. And there's this whole psychological state that you can get in, which is flow. And he's really, really worked on getting into that state and finding it, especially in these stressful situations in competition. And it's something that's super impressive about Ross's climbing is his ability to get into that state and try hard and focus. And it's this area of extreme focus and yet clarity.
Yeah, we saw him really getting into that state this morning on the slab. He was in the middle of this super powerful slab boulder, and he took a second and closed his eyes and took a couple deep breaths while standing in the splits on the slab. So he's good at getting into that flow state even when he's in a time of stress actually on the wall. And you can see him, you can sort of see it in his eyes there, looking up towards the next hold, looking really solid and really flowy right now.
Yeah. He does, and like you both were talking about, his flow state, I mean, he's had a lot of success over the last couple of years, and so all those changes he's been making have clearly been paying off. So it makes sense for him to continue to use all of those tactics to make sure that he's able to perform the way he needs to. That is not ideal for him there. I feel like more points would have been ideal to get a bit higher. And honestly, I am a little surprised. I thought he could have done a little bit more, but he did look a little fatigued. I think that this position is really uncomfortable, especially if you have longer legs trying to rock up and get above your hips there, especially with the wall right behind you. You see their toes are getting put against the wall. So kind of awkward position.
I do know he had some knee injuries in the last year, and so I wonder if that was something on that heel hook. It does look like it turns out a lot. And I know Jesse Grouper has a knee injury right now too, so a little worried about those heel hooks.
And Jesse's knee injury is on his left leg as well, so
which
that
is
left heel. I know I was noticing in the boulder round that Jesse kind of got lucky that most of the heels were right heels. If there were any, or like the ones you could find were generally right. So we'll have to see, aside from the one where he did a toe hook instead of a heel on men's number 4. So Ross getting a score of 95, not enough to put him into the top 8, so he is not going to be very happy with that, as this competition was so important to him. But sometimes that's how it goes. So now you can look at those standings. You see Ross just out of that top 8. Luke Meering right on the bubble with 98.9. Getting into the hundreds is definitely what you're going to want with your combined score. Anyone that was just from the boulder round hasn't been in that top 8 for a while. You have to have that combined score at this point to make the top 8. Unlike the women's final yesterday, Kyra and Annie kind of stayed around for a long time without having even climbed the lead route yet. So
I was saying in the booth yesterday, Kyra, that obviously you didn't know that, but it made me way less stressed watching as you pulled on, knowing that you could have slipped on the first move and it wouldn't have mattered and you would have been in finals anyway.
That's really funny. I thought there was a good chance I didn't have to get very far, but you know, you don't want to think about that while you're getting on the route, and make sure that you actually try hard. And also, I feel like it's like a sportsmanship thing. You want to make sure you give it your all, like in any scenario, and not rely on a different result.
Absolutely. We said that yesterday, that all these athletes are very determined and very driven and really just want to get to the top of this route in addition to making the national team or whatever the goal is. So I think you and Annie both really showed that yesterday. But was it a little bit relieving, though, knowing that you had a good boulder round coming into this lead route?
Yeah, in semifinals, definitely. It took a lot of stress off. And then in finals, a lot of us were really tied, and so it actually put a lot of stress on the lead route. But it was definitely you always have stress in a lead route.
That's true, because the one attempt is just so stressful. Yeah. Xander looking good so far. Gonna go with that toe hook method.
Also one of the people who has recently moved to Salt Lake City and has been working really hard, and he's been looking really good on lead, so hopefully he's able to show that on this route.
And he's another one of the athletes that's in a position where his score is very close to some of the other athletes from the boulder round, so getting high up on this route will be helpful for him to get into the top 8 and possibly make it into the final later today. I believe him and Dylan's boulder score was like within falls of each other, so we already saw Dylan, kind of set the tone for this route now, and Xander, I'm sure, is looking to do the same.
You can see him campusing up on this move where other athletes have chosen to put a heel up, a pre-heel as you call it, before you do that move. Using the underside of that flat hold volume, I think that's actually pretty smart to get his hips over, be able to make contact with that crimp a little bit easier.
Wow,
really nicely into that blocked hold.
Maybe the smoothest we've seen so far, to be honest. Also, Allison and I were noticing earlier, Kyra, that did Xander get a haircut between qualification and semis?
Yeah, we were talking about that as well. Looking really fresh.
Yeah, fresh.
Honestly,
for sure.
I stand by. I feel like a barbershop is a good place to hang out for a rest day.
Yeah, I mean, as an athlete, you want to stay focused on the competition, but it's also nice to kind of, relax and forget about it a little bit in order to continue to do your best. Just really nice moves here.
Oh, that really showed just how bad some of those crimps are.
Yeah.
The way he was grabbing it.
Nice climbing from Xander Waller. I feel like looking at his reaction, he feels like he should have gone higher, which again, I agree, he probably had a lot left in the tank, but those holds are so small and they're kind of just spitting people off if you hit them just a little bit out of position. So I'm sure he'll be happy to know that not that many people are getting up there, so he should be in an okay position to possibly make the final. Did he smile?
Little smile from Xander. He is notoriously hard on himself, though.
He is. He's a bit of a perfectionist, I would say. Yeah. He expects a lot, and as an elite athlete, he should expect a lot from himself, but it's definitely a balance because you don't want to be too hard on yourself and keep yourself from doing what you're capable of. But that combined score of 117 puts him in a great position and likely to have a spot in the final. We'll have to see how everything else goes. I never want to speak too soon. Going to check with the U.S. national team coach Josh Larson, and on the right we have Christopher Kosser, South African athlete, who actually foreran at this competition, which was really great to have him here to get on a lot of the men's boulder and routes.
Yeah, I feel like that probably helped the route setting team a ton, knowing, you know, Chris's level compared to these guys and being able to actually see somebody of that level on these routes beforehand. I feel like that takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for the route setters.
We had a quick flash of the standings. You see Xander was in third place after that climb of the semifinal route with 117 points. Now, Sergey Lochno will be really interesting to watch. He's always an interesting climber to watch. I feel like the way he reads beta is sometimes surprising, and he somehow pulls things off that you don't think anyone can do. And yesterday in the qualification round, he climbed beautifully in the lead round. It was very exciting. He ended up with the same score as Sean Bailey, so definitely could do something here.
Yeah, similarly, as we talked about earlier to Nathan Sato, he just didn't have a great qualification score in the boulder and came out really late in the round and was one of those athletes that sort of shuffled everything around in the rankings just based on his lead performance alone. And that's always really exciting to see. It keeps people on the edge of their seat. And his lead route was so good that he is one of our later athletes coming out today.
And he's also an athlete that tries so hard. I feel like he never gives up. Like when he's coming off the wall, he tried everything and anything he could ever do. I feel like every time he steps up on the lead wall, something amazing and incredible happens.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting in these formats, like lead is always second. And so if lead is your specialty, you have to do with this bouldering round first that maybe goes well or doesn't, and then you have to completely reset and then do the thing that you're good at. It was interesting in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic format as well that speed climbers had to go first, and then if you were bouldering, then you were in the middle, but lead you would be the most exhausted for and have to do it last. And so if it was your specialty, you had to let go of any things that happened before that and really focus, because anything can happen with this format and in the previous format as well.
They maybe should have done like American football and done a coin flip at the start of the event to see which discipline was going to be first.
Honestly, the bouldering round might just be a little pathetic.
Whoa. Well, that's devastating and really surprising. Sergey Lochno coming down off the lead climb very early.
We did talk about that risky section, though, at the beginning of this route. That is a powerful move that is down really low, and I think if you just lose a little bit of focus, a little bit of tension, and make the wrong beta decision. He did go for the full jump there and didn't use that heel or toe hook on that yellow hold. And so that was a big swing for him to hold, and I think maybe he just miscalculated it a little bit, missed that white hold on top of the big blue one. And that is really early for us to have lost Sergey, resulting in a combined score for him of 44.7, which definitely will not be enough to see him again later tonight in the final round. And I think you can see the disappointment on his face, not the score he was looking for.
Yeah, never what you want to happen. It's really a bummer, especially after having so many stellar rounds in lead. So another look at the board. Bob Countryman holding on to first, quite ahead of Adam, and then both the two of them really ahead of everybody else, so they're in a really good spot. Brian Squire holding on in that 8th place position right now. And up next we have Nathaniel Coleman. And Kyra, you referenced the Olympics earlier. Interesting. Now we have your fellow Olympian, the silver medalist Nathaniel Coleman, coming out to get on the wall. Are you fired up about 2024? Is that a plan for you?
I mean, hopefully. The first step was this competition. First, you had to qualify for our World Cup team, and then you have the chance to qualify for the Olympics. So this is kind of step one, and taking that one step at a time is really important. Not getting too ahead of yourself. And so I think that's kind of where Nathaniel's probably at. He needs to qualify for this team before focusing on the next step.
I don't know if you caught that, but you could see him there just gesturing and telling the crowd that he wanted them to cheer for him, and that he needed a little bit more of the psych to get him up that wall. So that's a really cool attitude for him to be in such a stressful situation, especially coming off the Olympics. It's a lot of pressure to have been one of the first Olympians, as I'm sure Kyra can attest to, and to have to show up to this event and qualify within your own country before you can even start thinking about what's going to happen leading up to Paris.
Yeah, taking it just one step at a time. And going back to the Olympics, do you have any fun stories from the Olympics, the Olympic Village, any cool other athletes that you met? Whether from USA or other countries?
Well, first of all, something about Nathaniel is that he definitely worked on his lead climbing a ton leading up to the Olympics, and how well he did in lead is what made him make finals at the Olympics. He didn't have the bouldering round he wanted in qualifiers, and then did so well in lead that it put him in finals, which was really cool to watch. And then in finals, he had both the bouldering round he needed and the lead round he needed, and that's how he got the silver medal. So he's a really good lead climber. He's definitely still in the running, and he was injured at nationals, so that was a bummer that he didn't get the best nationals result ever. But he's clearly back for more here at nationals.
Yeah, and we were saying too that he had a finger injury at nationals, but he also had a finger injury for the whole international season last year, so he didn't have the luxury of those. Good save from Nathaniel Coleman.
Oh my gosh. Woo!
Yeah, luckily he had gotten his hand fully on that white hold.
I mean, getting that heel hook or toe hook to get in the right spot is really helpful, but then that release can just sneak up on you.
Kyra, they had a cool pirate ship for you guys to play on at the Olympics.
I was going to say, actually, my best, I was trying to think of a good Olympic story, but after we were all said and done, we all stayed up like the whole night after closing ceremonies and probably had the most type 1 fun I've ever had as an adult, playing on this 40-foot long and tall pirate ship that was a playground. But it was a playground you would never find in the U.S. It was just, you could climb on any section of it. It was completely unprotected. You could climb like 40 feet in the air on it.
And
it was
sketchy.
We were all in heaven.
Liable. That'd be scary.
Different beta from Nathaniel there.
Oof. Oh my gosh, making me nervous. Oh goodness, gonna go back down. This again, we've been talking about that section being kind of tricky for the taller athletes, but quickly looking like he's recovered from that. And Nathaniel probably needing to try to get at least into that 60 point, but like you said, Kyra has focused a lot on becoming a better lead climber. It was so amazing to watch him in that final in Tokyo. I remember when I was commentating for NBC, actually, I remember I could hear his breathing on the screen. It was so cool. He was breathing so loud, and just feeling every move that he fought for. Just trying to set up here. Oh, undershoots it on the cross. It might be good enough, though. We'll have to see how that changes the scores.
I do think sticking that white crimp was really crucial for him. If he had fallen off on that lower section where he did some different beta than we've seen, that would have been probably the end of it. But he's still definitely in the running now in 5th place.
You see, he just kind of moves too quickly to that crimp. You kind of have to control that cross a bit more, and if you go with a little too much momentum, it's just so hard to get on it in the right position because it is so small. So his combined score will be a 113.7, so he's in the hundreds. He's actually just behind Hugo Hoyer, so in a good spot right now. Still a little unsure. We can't really tell you exactly what's going to happen because we have some more climbers to come still, but I will say, you know, some of the surprises that have happened put Nathaniel in a good spot. With Sergey accidentally falling pretty early, Nathaniel's in 5th place right now, so there is a good chance that he's able to stay in the top 8. But we're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll be back with the rest of the men's semifinal round.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Welcome back to the 2023 National Team Trials men's semifinal lead round. You are getting a look at Zach Gala getting through those opening moves on the men's lead route. Now, a lot of the men that are coming out right now actually have really close scores coming in from the boulder round. During the break, we were just discussing how close those scores are on, and how Zach does on this climb will determine some of the people if they'll stay in that top 8 or not. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. He has a score of 58.9, so he's going to really want to get close to that 60-point placard or past it if he can in order to solidify a spot up there. Kyra, it's been amazing to have you in the booth. I know you're really psyched to go cheer on the rest of your fellow competitors, so please join us again. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, I'd love to come back, but yeah, my nerves are just going a little too crazy right now. I thought I was done with it after being done competing, but, you know, got to go cheer on to get those out.
Sometimes it's harder to watch. Well, come back and join us whenever. We're always happy to have you.
Well, thanks, guys.
Bye, Kyra.
Zach setting up to get into that rock over on the heel hook. A lot of the shorter athletes having an easier time with that move. Looking like he has a lot left in the tank. This next section, though, not as important about how much you have left, but more about how efficient you're going to be, not only with your foot placements, but also with hitting all the handholds properly, because we've seen a lot of the men kind of bobble and mess up. But Zach is looking quite incredible at the moment.
Yeah, it's really tense for the athletes that are watching right now, namely Nathaniel Coleman that we just watched. He is definitely not in a safe position. If you're looking at the results, great work from Zach Galla. Moving through to that 60-point hold. We've only seen one other athlete get up here. I'm sure the rest of those athletes are nervously watching on. It'll be really exciting to see what happens here. Zach really solidifying himself into a good position in the overall standings as well, getting up high on this lead route. As he moves up towards the top, every hold he grabs is worth an additional 4 points in his overall score.
Oh, so close. Beautiful climbing from Zach Galla. Honestly, one of the best times I've ever seen him on a lead route in one of these bigger competitions.
Absolutely. Not quite up to where Bob's high point was, but right there with him. And with 3 more athletes to go, our top 5 in the overall combined standings are now confirmed into a spot, to have a spot in the final, which is Dylan Countryman, Adam Shahar, Zach Galla now, Xander Waller, and Hugo Hoyer, with 3 athletes to come.
And 3 kind of on the bubble right now, just depending on how those athletes do. So things are getting a little tense here, hence why Kyra wanted to make sure she could scream it out down there for her friends on the wall. So Zach's combined score of 127 points will put him in a great place and solidify his spot in the final tonight. He'll be really happy with that. You know, during the last Olympics, or the last qualification for the Olympics, Zach kind of had a bit of a heartbreaker. Actually, Zach and Xander, they were at Pan Americans and barely missed earning that spot. That went to Colin Duffy, so their Olympic dreams were kind of crushed there. So to have an opportunity to kind of get back to that would be amazing. So another look at that leaderboard, you see that Zach Galla has moved into 3rd place right now with that 127 score. So he is definitely going to be in the final tonight, as Ellis Ernsberger takes a look at the lead route again. And Ellis having a stellar round in the boulder earlier. Definitely a lead specialist, but putting up a lot of points during the boulder round.
Yeah, and still with some of the athletes honestly getting into really similar sections on this lead route as well. It is still so tight between some of these athletes. Single holds are going to make a difference for Ellis to push himself into that, some of those top spots and get into the final round. He is a really good lead climber. He does love lead, but he's going to have to keep it together, keep his nerves in check, climb confidently, and make good decisions. As we remember from qualifiers, you know, Sergey had an amazing lead route and then just one miscalculation and you only have one attempt and it's over. So Ellis is really going to have to keep it together, push for those top holds and make every hold count.
So true, and looking pretty calm right now. And speaking of Ellis, his brother Merritt will be in the speed final later today. It's actually after the men's lead discipline. We're going to have speed finals, and then later today we'll have the men's finals in boulder and lead. So definitely want to tune in for that speed competition because it's always very exciting, and hopefully we get some records put up today.
Yeah, really excited to see the speed round in a brand new gym on a brand new wall. Everything's all exciting in this gym. Everything feels fresh and new. Ellis
so
doing
fresh and so clean.
So fresh and so clean.
Yeah, Ellis absolutely nailing that foot cut there. Looking really cool and casual on these moves, like he has a lot in the tank.
A about to get into this tricky, little bit complicated heel hook section, and about to get up to the point where it's really going to start mattering.
Yeah, and I do think, again, this heel hook rock up move, a lot of the smaller competitors are not struggling with that body position as much as some of the taller competitors, so he should be able to move up to this next crimp fairly easily. Is kind of unsure of which way he wants to go right now. Getting a little tripped up here, but looking to still persevere through. Oh, and it's not going to happen. A little bit of misreading, I believe, honestly, of the sequence. He really committed to that right heel, but it makes it look like you're way too far away to get to that crimp. So that makes the results quite interesting, as we were expecting to see Ellis get a bit higher and kind of move into that top 8, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get him there. So,
and with only 2 athletes to come, slowly more and more of the top in the rankings right now are sighs of relief. There's Ellis's score of 100.5. But now the top 6 athletes have confirmed their spots in finals. So for any of you out there that are Nathaniel Coleman fans, that was him with this last attempt, sighing his sigh of relief. He will be in the final with those other top men. And there are your combined standings. You can see the top 6 on your screen, from Dylan Countryman holding the top spot down with 140.5 all the way down to Nathaniel Coleman with 113.7. Will be in the final later tonight, with 2 athletes to come to determine the finals fates of Simon Hibbler and Quinn O'Francia just above that line.
And again, I have to mention that Quinn's also in the speed final, so if he were able to stay in that top 8, that is an incredibly intense, long day for him. Our first look at Jesse Grouper as he walks out to refresh his memory of the lead route here in semifinals. Sure, he's very excited to get on this climb. I feel like this is a climb that would suit Jesse pretty well, especially that upper head wall, the resistance part with those small crimps, very precise footwork. I feel like that's where he feels very comfortable.
And Jesse is starting with a boulder score of 39.8, which is fairly good. Actually, he has struggled in boulder rounds in the past, but that's a decent score for him. So I think he actually will have quite a little bit of confidence going into this lead route. That is his preferred discipline, but he does need to perform really well here if he wants to make it into that final round. Getting a good look here now at Zach Galla and Nathaniel Coleman. We'll be seeing both of them again in the finals later on. You can see him breaking down the beta, talking about those hard sections, and I think probably that really powerful resistance crimp section up over the lip.
Yeah, it did seem to be a very tricky section. It's just so interesting how the footwork there was needing to be so precise, and it was just so easy to slip off there, especially that high up on the route. It's a little stressful, and I think both of them handled it really well. Jesse Grouper stepping on to the semifinal route. Jesse, one of those athletes that does need to pay attention to the clock more than others. He has timed out in the past a few times, so something that you'll notice from him is he'll occasionally look down, because there are timers that are visible to the climbers, so they can check to make sure that they're not going to exceed that 6-minute time limit. There are athletes who in the past have worn watches. I always thought that would maybe get in the way, but to each their own.
There is a clock. There's a clock obviously on the top left corner of your screen, but that's not real. That clock that you see there is on the ground, pointed up towards the ceiling slightly. So for these athletes that need to worry about the clock, as you can see Jesse doing a slow-mo left-hand move there, they do know where that clock is, and they can, if they have a moment when they're resting, take a glance down towards the ground and see how much time they have remaining left on the clock.
Yeah, it's just really important to know what kind of athlete you are. If you're an athlete who doesn't really have to worry about time, they're likely not ever going to really think about that, but Jesse is definitely one who will think about that. So it'll be interesting to see how he approaches this move. I could see the toe hook method being the preferred method for him.
And diehard USA climbing fans might think that they're relatively new to the name Jesse Grouper, but he is one of our older competitors here today. Again, I say older in air quotes because he is only 27, but he competed all through youth and then took some time off competing to do other things, to focus on science and go to school, and he's come back into the lead circuit and has been doing so well that he's decided to come into this combined discipline and try to get on to the national team. So he's been competing for a long time, even though he took a break, and you might not be as familiar with his name as you are with some of our other competitors that have been competing for a long time. But it's really cool to see him having been back on the circuit for a couple years now and coming into his own as one of the strongest in the country.
Yeah, it was cool to see that. I mean, you know, Jesse is very, very smart, so he did, taking that time away was for academic pursuits, and he was in Boston for a long time, but he recently moved to Salt Lake, so he's been training out there with everybody else as he easily gets into this really difficult crimpy section.
Yeah, we were worried about his left leg there with that brace on his knee injury, but he seems to have rehabbed it well enough to make it through that, and I think that bodes well for him moving forward.
Yeah, he's really going to like the rest of this route, in my opinion. You see he's kind of just shaking out there on the holds that were giving a lot of people some issues, just skipping that pink hold that is wedged between the silver lining on the wall and the hold, so making it really difficult to find the surface area to use, and easily into the 60 there. So now every move he makes, every scored hold will be worth 4 points, and at this point Jesse Grouper is looking to top this route. That will be his goal. Honestly, a lot of time on the clock left for him right now. I haven't seen him this high on a wall with that much time left in a long time.
And he needs these extra points. He really needs to be pushing towards this high point that we saw set by Bob Dylan. He's coming into this volume here. I believe this is the high point,
yeah,
if not close to it. I think Bob felt going up to this next blue volume on the right. That is for sure the new high point. Jesse Grouper is doing an amazing job. Every move he does now will be worth an additional 4 points. Moving into his comfort zone, which is the head wall of a lead route.
Yeah, so he should be putting himself in a position where he is in, but Jesse likes to top routes, so that's what his goal is here. I'm sure he was focused on doing well on the route and gaining points, but at the end of the day, he is focused on topping the route because he can. Like the women's final yesterday, that final draw is right before the top, so he'll have the opportunity to clip it there if he wants to, but he still has to get to the top because that top hold is worth the 100 points. So he does have to grab that hold in order to get the top in all 100 points, and that would really help his score, especially coming from the boulder round.
The men don't always get rest positions like that just before the finish hold, so he was really taking his time and getting back all he could. Gunning for the top now. Jesse Grouper with the top of this men's semifinal route. All smiles. He knew he needed that. He
really did.
He needed something great in order to move himself up into a finals position.
Because with that, that actually won't even beat Bob Countryman, even though he just topped the route, because Jesse was coming from behind in the boulder round. That puts him right below Bob. Beautiful climbing from Jesse, executing so well, as he's done so many times before. But, you know, in those moments where you know you have to perform, it's so cool to see these athletes really step up to the challenge and make it happen. So Jesse's score is going to be a 139.8, which will be just below Bob. Bob's is a 140.5. So he could have been in the top 8 without topping the route, but coming in a higher standing is always good, especially when we go back to countbacks, if that ever happens. So great climbing from Jesse Grouper. He'll be really pleased with that and have to rest up for the final.
As much as he can in the limited amount of time they're given.
Well, they're getting used to it, right? So Simon Hibbler now on the bubble in 8th place. Bob Countryman holding it down in first currently, with Jesse Grouper right behind him, and we have one more athlete to come out, Sean Bailey, and another one of the athletes that could really switch up this leaderboard. We'll have to see what he does. Another person that I think would really like this route, so we'll have to see how it goes for Sean Bailey.
But similarly to Jesse, Megan, Sean really needs this.
He does need this.
And he needs it to go well.
He needs to get up into that 60 area for sure. This is something he's been working for a while. I mean, he'd been living in Japan and came back for nationals, and, you know, clearly he wants to be back on the circuit, so he's here for a reason, and in order to get to what he wants, he needs to get high up on this route, because from the boulder round, he's coming in with a score of 48.4. So if he tops the route, he would easily be the leader. If he doesn't, he'll have to hope to get in between some of those other people in the top 8, but definitely a climber who is capable of getting to the top of this route. Another climber who's topped many a route been on top of many of the lead podium, so no stranger to this situation.
Yeah, and I think he will like it, especially if he can get up to where that crimpy section is, where we have lost so many of those other athletes. I know he and Nathaniel Coleman have spent some time recently climbing outside on what they think is going to be the next really hard route in the country. And although they're climbing outside on routes, it's still building a lot of fitness, a lot of endurance that is definitely very directly translatable to competitions lead climbing. And I think he's really going to be relying on that fitness here and hoping to put all of that outdoor training to use on this lead route.
Exactly. And Sean, not only does he have so much experience in the elite side of competition, nationally, internationally, but he's been climbing since he was a kid. He went all the way through youth climbing at Vertical World, and he just has so much experience all around. So he knows what he needs to do here. He just needs to make sure he executes. Right to that hold perfectly, easily holding that swing and straight into the heel hook. About as efficient as you can do that section.
Yeah, he's doing a really good job of staying calm, staying efficient, making sure to make every movement intentional. He knows what's at stake here. He knows he's under a lot of pressure, and yeah, I mean, he knows he can't afford to make a mistake on this lead route because, as we've said a number of times, you do only get one chance, and if you make a mistake, then that's it. Looks like he's going to take a minute here, shake out a little bit. You can see him looking up towards that other yellow flat hold that Nathaniel tried to use. Going for the same beta as Nathaniel, interestingly, and maybe thinking better of it. Oh, just locking off, making that beta work.
And going back, like we've seen a lot of the men do. This is kind of a precarious situation. Whew, quickly through that. And speaking back to his international experience, he's won a couple of World Cups in lead. He's won bouldering World Cups as well. 2021 Chamonix in the lead World Cup. First at Villar in 2021. He won in boulders in, was that Vail or Salt Lake? Vail.
Yeah.
Vail. One of the last times we were in Vail. So a lot of podiums for him. And then that, I mean, on top of that, he's also been on the podium, not in first as well. So lots of experience for Sean Bailey. And that's why he can get through a section like he just did down low into the 60. So he's in a good spot now. I do think a few more moves would secure him into a better position. I think if he gets around to where Zach Galla got, it'll put him into like a 116 point value. So still looking really good here. Doing what he needs to do. Oh, fall there. A little surprising, but I think he's still done enough in order to make it to the final, but definitely a little bit of a surprising attempt at the lead route.
That's one of those moments that obviously nobody ever likes to have a foot slip, but I definitely am happy it happened there and not earlier down in the route, because that definitely was enough to secure him a spot in the final. And Sean Bailey is definitely one to watch for this new combined format. Like Megan said, he's a decorated international medalist. There you have Simon Hibbler looking a little bit somber. It was his score that was just knocked out by Sean Bailey's performance on the lead route. So disappointing for Simon. He had such a good bouldering showing this morning, and it's always hard to be hanging on there right until the end and have it not pay off. It has so much tension, so much pressure, so much nerves, and then for it not to pan out.
Granted, I will say he must have had an idea. Sean is such a decorated athlete. It's not like he didn't have the idea that possibly he would get bumped out. There's a chance really that Sean could mess out and Simon could stay in, but ending up 9th overall for Simon, really great. So Sean's combined score being 120.4, putting him into 5th place right behind Zach Galla. So we will see him in the final tonight. So now we have our men's finalists. Bob Countryman at the top of that board, Jesse Grouper, Adam Shahar, Zach Galla, Sean Bailey, Xander Waller, Hugo Hoyer, and Nathaniel Coleman rounding out that top 8 in the final tonight after the speed final. So the men are going to have a little break, and we will be broadcasting the speed final shortly. So it'll be really exciting. Quinn Francia will be in that speed final. You see he ended up in 10th place. Simon Hibbler 1 spot out. Great climbing from all the men. Really, really exciting, and looking forward to the final. So please join us again later. Look at the speed wall. We will be here soon for the speed final. Check out the USA Climbing YouTube for the link to watch that broadcast, and we will see you there.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me, it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never gonna learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not gonna take me away from what I wanna do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.